Chapter 9. Kenzie and Teresa pulled up to the house they'd been invited to. There were already a couple cars in the driveway and another parked out front, so she assumed most of the group was already there. She'd dressed up a bit, wearing one of her prettier dresses and tying her hair back with a ribbon, with crystal earrings and a pendant with runes carved into it. She had debated wearing makeup, which she rarely did, but decided against it. Teresa was just in her usual jeans and a t-shirt. Although Kenzie liked Teresa's tomboyish simplicity, she worried a bit that it would make her stand out while attempting to blend in with the far right, but she didn't try to pressure Teresa to change. Her spirit guides weren't giving off any warning bells either. If anything, they seemed to be knowingly giggling to themselves, which made her worry that something was afoot. Teresa knocked on the door, and it was answered by a tall, thin white guy with a few inches of dark brown hair and a trimmed beard wearing a t-shirt with a picture of Gollum, Darth Vader, and a few other people Kenzie didn't recognize stuffing people down a well. "Hey, you must be Teresa and Kenzie. I'm Archer. Nice to meet you. Come on in." There were two big couches and a love seat in the living room with a coffee table between them. Ray and Robin were on the love seat, with Donald and Thomas on one couch and Miranda on the other. "Have a seat. Willow's just finishing up in the kitchen." Archer motioned to the empty space next to Donald where there was enough room for both of them, but Kenzie felt more inclined to sit next to Miranda. Teresa sat down next to Donald before she could make a move, and she debated for a moment which couch to sit on, but decided to sit next to Teresa after all. As they sat down, Archer went into the kitchen. "Wow, you look pretty today," Robin said to Kenzie, admiring her dress. "Thanks," Kenzie smiled back, feeling like the effort she'd put into making a nice witchy-looking outfit that fit their classical aesthetic had paid off. Robin asked, "How'd you find a dress that matches the green of your eyes?" Kenzie tried not to grin too widely. "I found the fabric online and sewed it myself." She was proud of her craftsmanship, even if she didn't like to brag. "Oh, wow, that's so cool," Robin said. "I'm working on one now. I hope it turns out half as nice as yours." "The one you're wearing is really pretty," Kenzie said, and she meant it. "This is just store-bought trash." Robin waved her hand dismissively. "Making our own is 10 times cooler." Kenzie smiled and nodded. She didn't have many friends who enjoyed making their own clothes, so it was nice to meet another girl who liked to sew. She tried not to let Robin's racist beliefs ruin the feeling. Miranda said, "I kinda wish I had time to sew." "I'm terrible at sewing," Teresa said, half mumbling. "You're good at lots of other things, though," Kenzie reassured her, but Teresa just shrugged. Willow came in from the kitchen with oven mitts and an apron on, her long strawberry blonde curls held back by a hair clip, carrying a glass dish with a lasagna in it. Archer followed with a square dish full of garlic bread and a stack of plates. Kenzie looked a little surprised by the dinner, but she had a feeling Teresa was hungry and would appreciate it. Robin said, "Hey, Willow, check out Kenzie's dress. She sewed it herself." Willow set the lasagna on the table, pulled the oven mitts off, and offered Kenzie her hand to shake. "Hi, nice to meet you, and wow, that is a pretty dress." "Thanks." Kenzie shook her hand. "Ooh, we should have a girls' night to get together and make clothes," Willow suggested. "Wouldn't that be fun?" Kenzie asked, "You like sewing too?" "I crochet mainly, but I've done a little sewing too," Willow answered. "And you must be Teresa." She offered Teresa a handshake, which she returned unenthusiastically. Robin said, "That would be fun. I need to get back to work on my dress. It's been sitting around half-finished for a couple weeks." "Maybe another weekend," Kenzie said, not wanting to commit to seeing these people too often. "Yeah, whenever," Willow replied. "Anyway, help yourselves. Does anyone want some water?" "Sure," Teresa said, leaning forward to cut a piece of lasagna for herself, clearly more interested in the food than the conversation. Willow went back to the kitchen as Archer got a plate for himself and sat down at the other end of the couch Miranda was on. "Looks like we've got just enough room for everyone. Nice." Thomas asked, "Is Tony not coming?" Donald replied, "No, he's going to some Nova meeting tonight." "He's in so many groups," Ray said. "I don't know how he keeps track of all of them." "Seems like he's trying to be the ambassador between all of them," Donald suggested. "Keep them all in touch and on good terms with each other." "That's admirable," Ray said, "but it also sounds time-consuming." "It's probably good to have someone doing that," Archer said. "Never know when we'll need to help each other out." Kenzie took a single piece of garlic bread and laid a napkin across her waist to catch the crumbs. Willow came back with a few glasses of water for people and then sat down next to Archer. Conversation slowed as everyone ate. She made a little mental note about Anthony and wondered how many of the other people helping Ezra had met Anthony. She was pretty sure some of them had met Donald, since she remembered him saying something about going to Active Club with Patriot Front. She wasn't sure if being active in more groups made him more likely of a suspect, but if anyone was likely to know something about Secret Hitler, she suspected Anthony was the most likely person to be involved in some way, or at least know someone who was. "You guys are really into evolution, right?" Teresa asked. "How does that fit with your religious views?" Kenzie had never really considered evolution to be at odds with her pagan beliefs, but she also hadn't given much more thought to evolution than what she'd needed to in order to pass high school biology. She was a little surprised by Teresa's question, but was glad that she was trying to join in the conversation. "Well, we don't take our creation myths completely literally in a material sense," Robin said, "so it's not an issue the way it is with some Christians." "And evolution explains why different races are different," Donald added. "As we evolve, so does our connection to the divine, and our gods evolve with us. That's why the different branches of pagan faiths all seem to have the same Aryan root, but express themselves differently in different tribes, with some common themes." Robin enthusiastically replied, "Ooh, good explanation." "We see the gods partly allegorically," Archer said, and Kenzie was pretty sure he was mainly including his wife and not all the others. "Sort of in a Jungian way, but with a spiritual aspect to it too. The gods are like egregores, basically, tied to the folk soul of their people, built through centuries of our people pouring our spiritual energy into them to build these spiritual guides and protectors over the history of our people." Do you know what egregores are?" Kenzie asked. "Isn't that, like, a spiritual entity created by a group's thoughts and emotions?" "Basically, yeah," Archer nodded. "So after thousands of years of our people worshipping gods, we've created these spiritual beings who continue to have power and affect the world around us, even though most people don't worship them directly anymore." "That's an interesting theory," Robin said, "but that would mean we created the gods, not the other way around." "As above, so below," Willow said. "Those spiritual forces shaped and guided our people's evolution for thousands of years, too. And the original gods were worshipped by shamans and animists without names before we had myths about them. So it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. They both grew and evolved together over time." Kenzie found the idea fascinating, but felt like it gave her as many questions as answers. "So what created the world originally?" "Who knows?" Archer shrugged. "None of us were there, and neither was anyone else who claims to know." "The universe is very cyclical," Thomas suggested, "so it may be a loop repeating over and over, but changing some each time through. Sometimes we even destroy gods and remake them anew in the image of the old gods. Just like sometimes we have to destroy our old habits and build new ones, but keep what worked from our old life." "A cycle with no beginning or end," Willow nodded, and that part rang true for Kenzie. But she could tell Teresa felt like she was in over her head when it came to the spiritual stuff. Teresa had probably hoped to talk more about the scientific side of things, which she was better at than Kenzie. But as she thought about the theory, it made her wonder, if most people today were Christians, how was that affecting things? "So, what about today when most people are worshipping Jesus instead of the gods? I always kind of figured that the Jewish God was just as real as all the other gods, but not the only God as his followers like to claim, especially since the Old Testament seems to imply that there actually are lots of other gods. They just want everyone to worship their God instead." "Right, the Jewish God is no different from the rest of the gods," Archer replied, "except that he was initially created by Jews, and that affects how he manifests in the real world. When Christians read their Bible and it says the blessing of Abraham is his descendants would rule many nations, and then his grandson Joseph takes over Egypt, and they celebrate that, and Isaiah and Daniel said their Messiah would give them control over the world, they're basically giving their spiritual power to this egregore of a Jewish king who wants to give Jews control over the world." Thomas added, "And then they wonder why Jews run their government, banks, media, and everything else when they pray to the King of the Jews." "Yeah, that all makes sense," Robin replied. "It all begins with religion, which is why they had to destroy our ancestral faiths, so we'd give them our spiritual power instead of giving it to our own people." Kenzie wasn't so sure. She didn't know much about Jews controlling the government, banks, and media, so the analogy didn't work that well, even if she shared his concern about the message of the Bible. "But there's also more to spirituality than just gods," Miranda said. "One of the more interesting theories I've heard is called pantheism. Basically, there is a singular creator, but that creator is everything. It split itself into many things in order to interact with itself, and thus became creation. So all of us have a spark of the divine creator in us, which is why prayer and meditation work for people of every race, even though they're not all equal at it.
Donald suggested, so some people are born with more latent power than others.
Right, and some people do more to cultivate that power than others, Miranda added, and perhaps the first division was into yin and yang, or the divine masculine and feminine, which is why you find some version of those dualistic forces in everything from Taoism to Zoroastrianism to alchemy, and most esoteric belief systems have some version of it. So the same spiritual rules would apply to all people, Kenzie suggested, but they might be dealing with different gods who evolved with their people, or have evolved to have different spiritual practices, maybe.
Thomas nodded.
Yeah, some practices might work better for some people than others.
Robin suggested,
like the runes working better for people whose ancestors used them.
Miranda agreed.
And the meditation practices that work best for me all come from Taoism, Buddhism, or Falun Gong, all Asian systems.
Robin continued.
And how men tend to be better at Galder or manifestation magic, while women tend to be better at Cedar or divination magic.
Kenzie realized that she was definitely better at predicting what was coming than she was at manifesting changes. Her best bet for manifesting change in the world outside their home was usually to tell Teresa what was going on and ask her to do something about it. That said, she knew Teresa had more masculine energy than her.
But doesn't everyone have some of both yin and yang in them?
Donald replied, basically, yeah. Spiritual gender is still sort of a binary, though. Even if you're working with things that combine both types of energy, you still have to deal with both kinds of energy as separate things sometimes.
Willow added, and there are practices where having a man with more masculine energy and a woman with more feminine energy performing their particular roles helps empower you more in your own role than trying to make them work together inside you does. Not that using both doesn't work, but like Robin was saying, sometimes it's more effective to specialize in what your gender is good at.
That resonated with Kenzie for her own life, but she felt bad for Teresa and could sense Teresa's discomfort.
It doesn't hurt to understand both. Robin replied, women have our mysteries, and some of them are special things just for women to understand. Men probably have their own too, don't you, dear?
Ray replied, no, never, and if we did, we wouldn't tell anyone. Robin grinned and patted his arm.
Good boy.
Kenzie was amused by the dynamic, but it didn't tell her much about where they drew their lines on gender roles. She felt secure enough with them to let her curiosity win out.
So how does that affect your views on things like gender roles and feminism and such?
Donald replied, biological gender affects a lot, and it's a binary. Spiritually, it's fine for people to connect with both energies, but that doesn't change what you are physically. There are some things where those differences matter, like men are stronger, so we'll do more difficult and dangerous jobs like construction, farming, factory work, that kind of thing. Even if some women can handle that kind of work, men do most of it. But women are more flexible. There's things like sewing that you're better at because of it.
Thomas added, maybe part of the reason women care more about fashion than men is they've been the ones making our clothes for thousands of years.
Archer said, yeah, so there are different things men and women are good at, and it's better for most people to specialize in what their sex is good at.
Miranda added, same with different races. Blacks run faster, yellows have higher average IQs, whites invent more stuff than anyone else.
Donald finished with, and we're better off because different kinds of people are better at different things, but we kind of have to stick with our own to some extent to preserve the things that make us different.
Kenzie wasn't sure what to think of that. It definitely wasn't as hateful as she expected, especially on the racial part, but she didn't think everyone fit into neat stereotypical boxes. Still, she had to nod along and pretend to agree. Okay, that's a pretty chill way of looking at it. Recognize the differences and work with them instead of against them. As the conversation hit another lull, the people who were done eating stacked their plates up together. Kenzie folded up her napkin and set it on the table. She could tell Teresa was still hungry, but didn't want to look like she was stuffing her face in front of a bunch of people. Normally she'd encourage her to eat enough, but she decided not to under the circumstances. Thomas and Ray pulled out their phones to check them, and the silence lingered a bit longer before Thomas spoke up. Hey, guys! Secret Hitler hacked a bunch of billboards!
Whoa, what?
Teresa looked over at his phone, and he turned it to show her, Donald, and Kenzie an image of one of the billboards stating that Levin had been blackmailed. Kenzie asked, do you think it's true? Probably, Thomas answered. I mean, most politicians are controlled somehow.
Isn't Levin a Jew? Donald asked. She's more likely to be blackmailing people than getting blackmailed, but either way, she's probably guilty of something. Kenzie tried to hide a scowl. She didn't like them assuming someone's guilt just because they were Jewish, but she had to hold her tongue.
Was there another murder, too?
Doesn't look like it, Thomas said. Might not have been reported yet if there was. Doesn't look like they've released the proof publicly either, Ray said, scrolling on his phone as Robin watched. We'll have to wait and see if the police do anything.
They're probably controlled too, Thomas said, but we'll see. They might sacrifice Levin the way they did Epstein and Maxwell if that keeps the story from getting bigger. Kenzie pulled her phone out to look for information, and most of the people in the room did the same. But she found the same information as the rest of them. Pictures of the billboard being hacked, no evidence of Levin's crimes, and no murder yet. Eventually, people started putting their phones away, giving up on finding any more information. A few people complimented Willow on her cooking, but Kenzie started to stare at the well on Archer's shirt, getting an odd feeling that it was significant somehow.
Hey, Archer, what's your shirt about?
Oh, this? Archer tugged his shirt to straighten out the picture. Okay, so get this. You know how Darth Vader threw the Emperor down the pit at the end of Star Wars?
Yeah.
Then he died shortly after, and Gollum dropped the ring into the pit, fell in, and died with it. The Terminator knocked the shapeshifter into the vat of molten metal, then descended in to die with it. The androids from Dragon Ball Z kill their maker in his underground lair, a little different from the others, but they're artificial men. Terminator is an artificial man, Darth Vader is more machine than man, and Gollum's name sounds like Golem, which is the myth of the rabbi who made an artificial man that turned on his maker and threw him down the well. They're all using allegory to tell the tale of the Golem who overthrows his maker.
Oh, wow!
Kenzie only recognized half of them, but she was a huge fan of Lord of the Rings, having read all the books multiple times, and she'd seen the movies a few times and grew up watching the first 6 Star Wars movies.
Whoa, that's deep.
Teresa seemed fascinated by his explanation.
I loved Dragon Ball Z, especially Abridged, but I didn't know it had something that deep hidden in it.
Oh, it gets deeper, Archer continued. So the Golem myth is originally a Jewish myth about a rabbi who created a golem using Kabbalah magic. In Star Wars, the symbol for the Empire is a sun with 6 rays of light. A sun is a star, so that's a 6-pointed star. The Separatists in the prequel trilogy use 6 triangles in a hex shape as their symbol, just like the 6-pointed star on Israel's flag, and there's Hebrew writing on Darth Vader's chestplate.
Wait, really? Thomas replied. I don't think you told me that part last time I heard this.
Yeah, you can look it up, Archer said before continuing. In Lord of the Rings, Sauron is Lord of the Jewelry, but not just any jewelry. The word kike, the slur for Jews, comes from the Yiddish word keikel, which means circle or ring, so he's the Lord of the Kikes. And the Terminator is trying to kill John Connor, J.C., the prophesied chosen one. So that's kind of a more Christian take on it, with the idea that the Jews killed Jesus.
Oh shit, you're right!
Ray pulled up a picture of Darth Vader's chestplate, which had 3 lines of Hebrew writing in between the buttons, and showed it to everyone else. Teresa asked,
Was Dr. Giro supposed to be a Jew too?
Yup, Archer confirmed. That's why he had that yarmulke-shaped skull cap on his head. Plus, he looks Russian, and 19 looks Chinese, and they're with the Red Ribbon Army. So who are the Red Russians and Chinese? Communists, and communism was created and spread by Jews. Kenzie could tell Teresa felt stunned by the information, and she was pretty shocked by it too. Even though she hadn't seen Terminator or Dragon Ball Z, she couldn't deny what he'd said about Star Wars or Lord of the Rings. She was starting to feel like there was some hidden truth there, something she'd been missing out on all this time, and it made her wonder if maybe there was something to all this anti-Jewish stuff.
That's really cool! I had no idea!
Kenzie couldn't think of anything else to say. That's not even the most interesting part, Archer said with a grin.
Don't drop everything on them all at once, dear, Willow said, putting her hand on his knee and giving it a gentle squeeze. Give them time to explore that part of the rabbi hole before you take them deeper.
Archer relented. All right.
It's interesting, though,
Kenzie said, wanting to learn more. Archer told her, Well, if you want to learn the rest of it, you'll have to come over and watch Back to the Future sometime.
Teresa said, I think I saw that one once.
Kenzie said,
I don't think I've seen it. I don't watch a lot of movies.
Me either, Ray added. But that was really interesting. Is the Golem myth hidden in anything else? At least a few video games, Archer replied. BioShock, Deus Ex.
Someone online told me it's in this old game called Heroes Quest for Glory or something like that, but I haven't had a chance to check it out.
Oh, I've played BioShock, Robin exclaimed, with the little sisters and stuff.
Yeah, Archer said. So you know how you play a man with artificial memories? Artificial man, just like the Golem. And your father, Andrew Ryan, is based on Jewish author Ayn Rand. And you have to go down the well under the sea to kill him and the guy who gave you your false memories, Frank Fontaine.
Killing your Jewish makers, just like the Golem, Robin nodded. I get it.
Exactly. Archer and Robin grinned at each other.
Oh, wow, that's really neat. I learned something new about one of my favorite games growing up.
Miranda asked, What about Frankenstein? Archer replied, Why do you think the doctor's name ends in Stein?
Makes sense. Miranda nodded. A Jewish doctor creates an artificial man from dead bodies, reanimates it like a rabbi animating a golem, then the monster loses control and tries to kill his maker. How many of these allegories were written to be critical of the Jews, and how many were written by Jews or their supporters?
It's hard to say, Archer replied. BioShock was definitely created by Jews. Same with the Deus Ex games, where you play an augmented machine man who turns on the shadowy conspiracy that created him. But BioShock makes Andrew Ryan look good when you go to kill him, and Deus Ex makes it look like the worst conspirators aren't Jewish. George Lucas and Tolkien weren't openly anti-Semitic, but their allegory paints the Jews as much more villainous, so I think they may have secretly hated the Jews, but knew the only way they could get their message out there and get away with it was to keep it a secret. I can't prove it, though.
The fact that it's such an important myth says a lot about the Jews, Robin added. Look at all the fake belief systems they created to control people. Christianity, Islam, communism, central banks, feminism, neoconservatism, so many things.
Willow nodded.
Yeah, and half of them have turned on the Jews in one way or another. No wonder they have to put the golem myth everywhere, like a secret reminder that their creations will all turn on them someday.
Some of them look like they were created to be controlled opposition, Donald added. Like, you look at communism, created to oppose capitalist bankers. But who were the capitalist bankers? Mostly Jews. Who created and spread communism? A bunch of Jews. Why? So anyone who opposed Jewish bankers would be controlled by Jewish communists.
Are there other myths like that hidden in a bunch of different things? Kenzie asked, curious to see if there were any examples that didn't revolve around the Jews.
Yeah, there's tons of occult symbolism like that hidden in mass media, Archer said. The golem myth is one of the most common, but you can find Saturn symbolism in a lot of things too. Mystical numbers like 33 and 666 everywhere. References to yin and yang and the pineal gland and stuff. As he mentioned the pineal gland, Kenzie remembered watching Pinocchio about the wooden boy who became a real man.
Would Pinocchio be a golem allegory too? Or does it not count since he didn't overthrow Geppetto?
I don't know for sure, I never read the original, Archer replied, but there is some weird occult stuff hidden in the Disney movie. And I think his name was a reference to the pineal gland in your brain that affects your mental chakras. So maybe, especially if he was trying to give a more positive view of the golem freeing itself. Kenzie smiled, proud of herself for noticing something like that so quickly after being given the idea to look for it. Even if they didn't learn anything about Secret Hitler from these people, she'd still learned something very interesting, and was starting to look forward to having a movie night to learn more. As she thought about the fact that she might have to leave this group behind once the investigation was over, or that they might stop wanting to be friends with her and Teresa if they found out the two of them were a couple, she felt sad. She hadn't had a conversation this interesting in a long time, and she hoped to learn as much as she could from Archer before that time came. Willow gathered up the dirty dishes to take them into the kitchen, and Archer grabbed the last of the lasagna and followed her. Conversation died down again, and a few people made small talk while others checked their phones. Kenzie was still deep in thought. Why had one of her favorite authors, who'd woven so many pagan themes into his books, also hidden a narrative about overthrowing the Jews in his work? Was there some hidden reason, and was that why Tolkien claimed to be Catholic while basing so much of his work on pagan myths? And why did some of her favorite movies have the same narrative? Why did it sound like this was commonplace, present in at least half a dozen other major franchises, and some obscure ones too? And what more was he going to tell them next time? As they sat there, Thomas spoke up again. "Oh shit, there was another murder! Holy shit!" Teresa asked, "Was it another black guy?" "Yeah, look at this!" Thomas showed her a picture of a naked black man with a noose around his neck, hanging from a large crucifix. The words fraud, theft, and murder could be seen burned into his torso.
Looks like he was found at St. Joseph's Cathedral. Wasn't there someone at Active Club who went there? Kenzie and Teresa both looked intently at the photo, and when they heard that someone from Active Club, maybe even a Patriot Front member, went to the church, Kenzie was hopeful they finally had a lead, despite the gruesome murder. Yeah, Donald replied. I think Chris went there for a couple months. But he's in that pro-white church Bruce goes to now. One of the new guys brought it up. Thomas said, Wow, I wonder if he knew the guy who died. Kenzie's heart sank a bit when she realized that the person going there was probably one of the people from Ezra's group, but it was possible that this Chris person had known the victim too. She wasn't sure if pressing them for information on Chris was a good idea right away, and maybe the others would know something about him if they'd met him at Active Club, or if his new church was the one Barbara was spying on. But she did get an idea that might get them some more information. Do you think the murders could have something to do with the occult? Kenzie directed the question at Archer. Ooh, maybe, Willow replied. That would explain a lot. Occult ritual murders are more common than you'd think, and are sometimes used to affect world events. Wait, really? Kenzie asked, surprised by the last part. Yeah, Willow continued. Like, there were these murders in Moscow, Idaho a few years ago, right around the start of the war between Russia and Ukraine. Lots of Masonic symbolism. Like, the murder took place at 1122 King Road. 11 plus 22 is 33. King because they want to rule the world. One of the victims' initials was MM, like Master Mason. Another was from a town called Rathdrum, which is like wrath plus murder backwards. I can't remember all the details, but I heard about it and looked into it when they caught the killer. Seems like there were lots of rumors about weird things being done to the bodies and such when it first happened, and then the evidence of that part got scrubbed from the net. And then when they caught the killer, he was ethnically Jewish. Kenzie wasn't sure if that actually proved anything, but if Willow was interested in occult murders, perhaps she'd be able to provide some clues about the murder. Is there anything about the secret Hitler murders that makes you think they might be occult? I thought maybe it was just a more, extreme part of the movement, not chill like you guys, but do you think there's more to it than that? Like, could the killer be trying to cast a spell to counter the magic from Freemasons and Jews? Well, the fact that the killer is carving people's crimes into them is interesting, Willow replied. Could be there's a religious reason why they're specifically killing sinners or whatever, and hanging this one in a church. It's definitely possible. I should look into it more. Teresa suggested, Maybe somebody's using the murders to empower Secret Hitler. Or maybe it's a Jew who's spying on Secret Hitler and timing the murders for when they're doing activism, Ray suggested, trying to make people think they're killers. Could be a Jewish ritual of some kind, Donald suggested, sacrificing people to affect the public and get people pissed off like they did with George Floyd, Kyle Rittenhouse, and Charlie Kirk. Oh man, that's a whole other set of possibilities to consider, Kenzie said. I don't even know what to think now. Thomas said, Conspiracies do be like that, Mr. Stansel. Teresa asked, Who's Mr. Stansel? Wait, you've never seen the Will Stansel show? Ray asked as Teresa and Kenzie gave him puzzled looks. Oh man, I know just the episode we should watch. Miranda said, I still think Murdoch was better. Willow agreed. It do be like that, Mr. Stansel. Murdoch was magic, whether the makers knew it or not, Archer said, but let's save that for another night. For now, we present to you the most glorious AI slop ever created. So far. Probably. Kenzie and Teresa endured a couple episodes before making an excuse to leave for the night. Satisfied with what they'd learned so far, but not as amused by the weird racist humor and rape jokes of the Will Stansel show as the rest of the group. Earlier in the night, she'd hoped for a way to remain friends with the group after all this was over, but the offensive jokes had started to sour her on that idea. Donald offered to walk them out to their car, which seemed a bit silly to her since she had Teresa, but it almost seemed like he was trying to play the part of protecting Teresa, which seemed just as silly to her. She couldn't stop him, though, and soon they were outside. As they reached the car, Donald put a hand on Kenzie's shoulder. Hey, I know you're a little new to all this, and it seemed like some of the jokes in there got to you a little. Maybe some of the talk about evolution and race and gender did too. It's fine if you're still figuring things out, and if some of the harsher stuff bothers you a little. You're women, and you're supposed to have a softer side. You don't have to change that. You can let the men deal with the harsher side of life so you can stay in touch with your feminine sides. Teresa wasn't sure what to say. Thanks, she muttered, and realized that Donald had also taken Teresa's hand when Teresa took it back from him. He took his hand off Kenzie's shoulder and said,
Drive safe. I hope we can hang out again soon.
Kenzie replied, "Good night." Teresa added, "You too. Drive safe." When they got home, Kenzie sat in Teresa's lap and wrapped her girlfriend's arms around herself, leaning back against her and thinking about what Donald had said. Teresa was big, but Donald's hand had felt rougher, his grip a little stronger without even trying. She had always relied on Teresa to fill the role of a man in her life, and she wondered what would happen if this man somehow took Teresa from her. She didn't think Teresa would want to give her up, but she knew her girlfriend was more into men than she was. She was worried about what might happen if he tempted her girlfriend. They couldn't enter this far-right world as lovers. Kenzie and Teresa wouldn't give each other up easily, but Teresa might be torn apart inside if she developed feelings for Donald and was forced to choose. She was still a woman inside, after all, despite her size. Thoughts about the divine masculine and feminine and their influence on gender came up again, giving her a useful container for her thoughts about what the infiltration was doing to their relationship. She hoped that the connection between Chris and the church where the murder happened would help the group uncover more about Secret Hitler, or that the occult angle would provide some clues about the killer's true motives, and that it would be worth the storm Donald might bring into their relationship.